Hi everyone, it's Stacey. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, which is part of my Learn to Sew series. Today we're going to talk about cutting fabric with a rotary cutter, and all the instructions and full notes are in the description below. And please make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming videos all about learning to sew. So to cut fabric with a rotary cutter, you're going to need 3 products and they all work together. You're going to need a mat, a ruler, and of course your rotary cutter. Now there's all sorts of brands and products, and I suggest you buy whatever works within your budget and whatever you think is going to work the best for you. In the description below, I do have the products that I recommend, and I'm just going to go over them quickly now. So first of all, we have a mat. I like the Alpha 36 by 24 inches mat, which is the largest mat you can buy. I like it because it means you'll just buy one mat and you can do all your projects on it. However, you might want to buy a smaller mat in the future because it is handy when you're doing smaller projects, but of course the large mat is all you need and you can do everything on it. Then if you've got the largest mat, you will need the largest ruler, and I've got the 24 inch by 6 inch ruler here, and you can see that fits perfectly on the width of my mat. And if you're only going to buy one ruler and one mat, it's these two, because you can do all your projects with just these 2 things. Plus of course your rotary cutter, and I like the Alpha 45mm ergonomic cutter. And please be careful with them. They're basically a blade on a wheel. There is a locking mechanism on here. If I push the lever down, the hand lever, you can see it's not doing anything. But if I press that red button, it unlocks it, and now it will move open and shut, and you can see my blade. If I have the lever open and you can see the blade and press the red button again, it locks it on. And that's what I do when I'm using it. And then when I'm not using it, I press the red button again, which means I can open and shut it. And then when it's shut, I press the red button again, which now means it's locked. So whenever you're not using your rotary cutter, please make sure you lock it, because it is super sharp, super dangerous, and we need to be extra careful with our rotary cutter. So now I'm going to show you how to cut fabric with your rotary cutter. Now there are 2 schools of thought on what you use to cut your fabric. Do you use the ruler or do you use the mat? Well, I've discovered over time I actually like to do a combination of both, and depending on how big my fabric is and what I'm doing at the time, I might use my mat or I might use my ruler. But what I'm going to do is show you how to do both of those things, and then you can decide what works best for you. So before we cut our fabric, we always give it a good press or iron, and if you'd like to know a little bit more about that, for example, if you should be using steam or starch and what have you, please check out my other video, which is above. But for now, I've just given this a press, and now let's get cutting. So we take our piece of ironed fabric and we place it on our mat, and we make sure it's nice and smooth and not got any wrinkles in it. And then the first thing we do is, if it is a piece of fabric that's been cut off the bolt, we take the manufacturer's fold, and that's the fold that's in our fabric, and we place that on a line facing us down below. So we wouldn't have our fold up the top here, we'd have it down the bottom here, and then we line that up on a line on our mat. Okay, can you see how the fabric is sitting perfectly on that line? We don't want it slightly crooked. For example, like that is not sitting on the line. I can see it's covering the line here and going over the line there. We want to line it up nice and perfectly on that line along the whole way. So now we just need to cut our first straight line so that we've got a nice straight line to work from to then cut our other pieces. So I'm going to take my ruler, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line it up with a line on my mat. So for me, I'm going to line it up with number 23 at the bottom, 23 at the top. I'm lining up my ruler at the top at 23 and at the bottom at 23. And then I'm also lining up the ruler. There's a line on my ruler here, and I'm lining that up with the fold of my fabric. So now I know that if all those are lined up, it's really nice and square, and I can cut that to get my first nice straight cut. So you can see I'm at 23 at the top, and my ruler's lined up with 23 at the bottom, and I've also got this line in my ruler lined up nicely with the fold of my fabric. So now we're going to cut our fabric, and what I always suggest you do is check it, double check it, and then triple check it before you cut. And there's a few tricks to cutting our fabric to making sure this ruler stays nice and straight and doesn't move and wobble as we are cutting. What we do is we fan our hand out, we place it down firmly, we have our pinky off to the side and onto the fabric, which helps anchor our ruler. And we have our fingers away from the edge of our ruler. And then what we do is we take our cutter, we turn it on, we start before the fabric on the edge of the ruler and we hold it up against the edge of the ruler, and we go in one nice movement with the rotary cutter all the way up. We don't go backwards and forwards, but what we do is once we come past our hand is we pause, we lift our hand up and we move it. And then we continue on and we pause and move our hand as many times as we need to be comfortable that we're cutting it nicely. So I'm going to do that for you now. I've got my ruler lined up at the 23 at the top, 23 at the bottom. It's on a line. And remember, we're not trying to cut it at 23. We just needed any number on our mat to cut that straight line. So I'm going to place my hand down firmly. I'm going to place my pinky off to the side and onto the fabric, anchoring my ruler down. I've got my fingers away from the edge of my ruler. I'm going to turn my rotary cutter on. I'm going to place the blade up against the ruler before the fabric, and then I'm going to press firmly, but not too firmly. This might be something you need to work out how firmly you need to press yours. And then I'm going to push up just past my fingertips. I'm going to pause, lift my hand up carefully, place it down again, and then continue on. Pause again and do that one last time. Then I'll turn my blade off and lock it off. Check that that's cut, and I've skipped a few stitches there, so that's okay. I can just leave it as it is, put my hand down firmly here because this is where I need to just cut those bits again. And then I'll run over that one more time. So I'll do that again. I'm just going to take any number. I'm going to go with 19 this time. So I'm going to line up my ruler at the top at 19. At the bottom of 19, I'm going to line up a line of my ruler with the fold of my fabric. I'm going to check it, double check it, triple check it. And when I'm happy, I'm going to place my hand down firmly. I've got my pinky off to the side, anchoring my ruler. I've got my fingers away from the edge of my ruler. I'm going to turn my cutter on. I'm going to start before my fabric, hold my blade up against the ruler, press firmly but not too firmly, come past my fingers, pause, lift my hand up, and then continue on. Now, should your ruler accidentally move a little bit, don't panic, just pause and move it back to the number you want it at, and then carry on. Lock your blade and then check it's cut. So now we've done that first cut, what we can do is we can take this cut edge and the folded corner and bring it down to the corner of our mat and check that it's right angle, which means it's a perfect nice straight cut. So if I line the edges that I just cut on this line on my mat and the folded edge on this line, you can see that sitting in there perfectly. So what that means is I've cut a beautiful right angle. So let's say I want to cut my fabric now at 4 inches by 4 inches. I need a 4-inch square. So what I would do is I would line up that fold on a line again, and then I could line up my fabric on the 0. So that means I would then line up my ruler with the 4, and I would line it up at the top and the bottom, and I would double check it, triple check it, and cut it, and then I would get a 4-inch strip to then cut in lengthways to get my 4-inch square. Or I could have it on 1 and then add 4 inches on and cut it at 5. Can you see how that's working? I'm working with the grids on my mat to work out my 4 inches. Or what I could do is I could cut it using the lines on my ruler. So we cut the first edge, and we always do just using a line on our mat, but now that we've cut it, we can now cut our second line using our ruler if our ruler is wide enough. So I could take my ruler, I could line up a line on my ruler on the edge of my fabric. I could line up the edge that we just cut so that it's 4 inches. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 inches. So now if I cut here, again, I'm getting a 4-inch strip. I'm not using the mat to work that out. I'm using the ruler. However, to use this technique, your ruler must be as wide as you want to cut. So let's do that. Let's use the mat the first time. I'm going to line up the folded edge on my mat on the 0. I'm going to line up this edge here as well. So we're nicely lined up. I'll take my ruler. I'm going to line it up with 4 at the top, 4 at the bottom, and I'll double check it, triple check it. I've also got the line of my ruler lined up on the fold, and then when I'm happy, I'll cut, I'll press down, and now I have a 4-inch strip, and now I would turn it to cut my 4-inch square. Or just to show you what I could have done is I could have taken my ruler and I could have, this doesn't have to be on a line, I'm going to move it off the line to show you. I'm even going to have it crooked, slightly crooked. I could take my ruler and I could count 4 inches in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and line up that 4-inch mark. It's also numbered on my ruler here. Line that all the way along the edge of my fabric at 4 inches. Then I would line up a line on my ruler going this way along the fold of my fabric, and I would cut it like that. And I'll do exactly the same. Hand fanned out, pinky off to the side, fingers away from the edge, cut it on, pause, pause. It moved a bit there, did you see that? I'm just going to straighten it up. And now we have 2 4-inch strips. Both are perfect, both done a slightly different way. Now we're going to cut it into a 4-inch square. And what you can do is you can cut 4 layers of fabric at once. I recommend that being the absolute maximum. And what we could do is place those on top. And then we will just line up a line on our mat again, pick a line on our mat and cut a straight edge, or we could line up a line on our ruler on our fabric, top and bottom, and cut. So now we've got our first nice straight edge. I'll flip that over, line it up with a line on my mat, top and bottom, take my ruler, and again I could work out 4 inches from my mat, so I'm on 1, so I would cut at 5, or I could use the lines on my ruler, so I know this is 1, 2, 3, 4, line it up with a line on my ruler on the edge of my fabric, along this way and along the edge, and when that all looks straight, again placing some pressure down, hand fanned out, pinky off to the side. And now we have our 4-inch squares. So when you're learning to cut fabric with a rotary cutter, just have a play with a bit of scrap fabric. Just imagine you want to cut a 2-inch strip and just maybe try cutting a few. So just line your edge of your fabric up on a line on your mat, take your ruler, pick any line on your mat to cut that first edge, line up a line on your ruler on the edge of your fabric, and then cut, remembering hand fanned out, place firmly down, pinky off to the side, fingers away from the edge, and then start before your fabric begins. Hold the blade up against the ruler and press firmly, and then we flip it over. You might want to start at 4. Then you'd line your ruler up with 6 at the top and at the bottom, and a line on your ruler against your fabric here. You double check, triple check, and cut. Or you might want to be using the lines in your ruler, so you take your ruler and work out 2 inches, 1, 2, your lines here, line that all up. I recommend just having a play until you get used to cutting with your rotary cutter. Once you get the hang of it, it really is super easy and super quick. Okay, so that's rotary cutting. I know it can be a little bit scary and daunting at first, but trust me, once you get the hang of it, you'll be whizzing along cutting your fabric with your rotary cutter in no time. I do have another video that might be a little bit more comprehensive, and I take my time a little bit more in that one, and the link is above for that video, so please feel free to watch that one if you'd like to watch another video as a reference. And now let's get on to this week's project, which is making a scrunchie. Thank you for watching my videos. If you're enjoying them, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment.